Welcome to today's episode of One Breath. Today we will take a look at what we seldom look at. We will look at the small things and examining their propensity to become big things, recalling how Jesus said a mustard seed is the smallest seed that becomes the biggest tree. We will begin in a few moments after the invitation of the bell.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Father. Thanks for just being here, for letting me be, for letting me be, for allowing me to be. The very expression, the very heart, the very mind of you. You're awesome, Lord. You're awesome. Awesome. You're awesome. Okay. God is awesome. Awesome, 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 awesome. So this week, I'm going to talk about small things. Small things. Something that came up during the week. The words came to me. These words came to me. I posted them on Facebook. It says, "'Tis the small things that make the heart big." And it's the small things that break the big heart. And it's the big things that make the heart small. And it's the big things that break the small heart. And I started to contemplate on the little things. And as I did, I started to see the big picture. Yeah. I started to contemplate on the little things, and as I did, I began to see the big picture. And Jesus said, He said, "The kingdom of God is like the mustard seed. It's the smallest of seeds. Yet when it grows, it becomes the biggest of trees." It's like huge, and all the birds of the air come and nest in it, and it's, the kingdom of God is like that. It's a kingdom of bottom up rather than top down. It's not about God being this all-powerful dude sitting on the throne ordering the little guys around. It's not like that. It's more of this starts at the base level. This starts at the level of humility, and it comes up into being, comes up into being God Himself. God Himself starts in the small things and comes up into being Himself. So, and that's kind of the way our hearts are raptured. That's how God tends to work, you know. It's not a kingdom like men have where there's a boss and it's a rule from the top down. This starts at the small things. The small things are very powerful. The small things are very powerful. And King Solomon wrote what we ascribe in the Bible as the Song of Solomon, a book, and there's this verse of scripture, and it says this. It says, "Catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, or vineyards that are in the blossom." And looking at that, we can see that it's the small things, the little foxes that spoil the vineyards. The little things. It's the small things that eat at our very being. It's the small insects that bite us and annoy us. And yet at the same time, it's the glimpses of beauty that make life to be beautiful, just those small glimpses over a lifetime. And it's the small whiffs of food cooking that draw us into the kitchen, the small scents that draw us into the rapture of the whole experience. And it's the things that we blow off. It's the things that we blow off that actually really blow us away. The spectacular and the sensational things that are outside of us, well, they get our attention, but it's only really for a small moment. A 100 years from now, you won't hear the word Trump on the news every day. All the problems and the issues of what's going on right now will be very faint memories. They won't have the attention of everybody 100 years from now. So the spectacular and the sensational things outside of us, they grab our attention, but it's really a small time, a small moment. Yet it's the small things. It's those little things. It's the small things that make a lifetime to be that which is in itself spectacular and sensational. So it's the small and the spectacular and sensational things outside of us make life to be that for a small moment, but it's the small things that make a lifetime to be that which itself is spectacular and sensational. So it's relationships. We can look at relationships, for example, in which small, snide, cutting, biting remarks are made on a daily basis. And those small, cutting, biting remarks, those little condescending and contemptuous remarks, over a period of time kind of affect us like a large swarm of mosquitoes. Small bites that make for a miserable environment and a pretty horrid atmosphere. So it's wise not to bite and devour one another, even in small bites. Even in small bites. I think I'd rather face a big dog. I think I'd rather face the bite of a big dog than a lifetime of one nipping at my ankles, than the little ones nipping at me. Because what the big dog hits you with is over in a moment. Just those little nips that get you. It's those little nips that make you to be bitter, that make you to be like that if you don't watch it. But at the same time, relationships in which a quiet, listening ear is consistently present. Nothing mild or boisterous or outstanding, but just a quiet, listening ear, a very small thing. When it's consistently present, it has an effect on our hearts over time. When others allow us space to listen to ourselves by being listened to, we're given the opportunity to listen to ourselves by being listened to. We're given the opportunity to listen to ourselves by being listened to discover who we are, by others giving us space to be, time to be within their hearts and their lives. That persistent, faithful, quiet listening ear. And it's the persistent presence of such things. It's the persistent presence of such things as that actually solidifies a relationship. And when those relationships are solidified, what comes out of them is a birthing. When things come in contact with one another, there's a birth by the contact that's made. And it can be a very simple birth. If you've never been touched by me and I touch you, all of a sudden there's somebody that arises that has been touched by me. I'm still me, you're still you, but you're also somebody that's been touched. Very, very simple things like that. Or we could look, for example, at the wind and the water. When both are present and they come in contact with one another, when they're both willing to be present with one another, this thing called a wave is born. A wave is born out of the wind and the water making contact. It's the relationship of the wind and the water. Without that relationship between the wind and the water, there is no wave. Or as the Zen people like to say, no mud, no lotus. And when we divorce ourselves from relationships, what we prevent is the birth of things. And this can help us understand why things are the way they are in the world today. When we look not at the things on the surface alone, not at simply the sights and the smells and the sounds and the taste and the things that we see on the news and the things that we see at first glance, but when we look at what's unseen, we see relationships. That's not seen with the naked eye. That's not heard with the physical ear. It's relationships what bring things into being. So say if our relationships with one another is awry, that can very easily produce a war. And the war is the child, the fruit of the womb of that relationship. Because without a twisted and a perverse relationship, war is not given birth to. And when our relationships are right, when they're in alignment, then it gives birth to happiness, contentment, and equanimity. But the relationship itself depends on what we bring to it, right? Say if we bring the seed or the sperm of consciousness of separation to that relationship, the fruit that will produce will divide us and make us smaller and keeping us apart. Yet if I bring the seed or the sperm of consciousness of wholeness to that very same relationship, it becomes a holy relationship. And our beings and our heart are enlarged and our minds are liberated, given space to be. In considering those things, let's consider how resolve in what we bring to a relationship differs from ambition. Ambition seems to form a bastard sort of a child that comes from a quickie, from a one-night stand in a bedroom, that kind of a thing, you know. Yet resolve forms a love child with family, by the consistency of the presence that resolve brings to that relationship. A presence that is coming by a persistence of trust, along with a patience to be with what's here as we are and as it is. That has a great and a lasting effect upon the world. A presence that arises out of a persistence of trust and a patience to be with what's here in its own time. persistence and patience. We can look at a mountain, and big as the mountain is, and as tough as it is, in time, it might take a long time, but in time, it will turn into sand and be washed away, one raindrop at a time, one raindrop at a time. So the small things, the little things, can have a really big impact on the world. Picture, if you will, a town or a city and a hill next to it, and we look up on the hill and we see this huge boulder that's big enough to crush a whole bunch of people in the city sitting there leaning on top of that hill, and we wonder why it doesn't roll down and crush everybody. And so we walk up the hill and we examine it, and we see just under the edge of it there's this small pebble that keeps it from rolling. Much like if you would push a car and hit a small rock and keep it would stop the tire from rolling when you're pushing it with your hands. And just the presence of that which is small, that small stone, that small pebble, can keep that huge boulder from crushing and devastating and producing a bunch of horrid circumstances. And what we can take from that is that it's not so much the size that matters most, but it's the presence. It's the presence that counts. It's that resolve, that persistence, that patience to remain here with what is. The small things in their consistency control great things. It's the small, the inconspicuous, it's those things, that's the small things, the inconspicuous, hidden things that influence us the most. Because that which has the greatest influence upon us is not what we readily see, it's not what we readily hear, but it's those things that we overlook, that we don't see. Consider the sunlight. The light itself is not visible. If the light itself was visible, looking out through this window at that tree down there, I wouldn't see that tree if the light itself was visible, because the light would become a curtain, a cloud in front of it. So sunlight itself is not visible, it's invisible. Yet its presence, you don't see it, but it's still there. The sunlight not being invisible, its very presence on our skin will leave us with a sunburn or a tan. The sunlight, though invisible, by its presence alone will melt the ice and provide us with water. This brings me to consider what Lao Tzu wrote in the Tao Te Ching. He describes the master as being one who teaches without teaching, who does without doing. But does things so inconspicuously that influences the crowds so inconspicuously that the people think that they're thinking on their own, when all along they're being directed by his presence. Well, it's not a work done by force of words. It's not a work done by force of action. It's a work of presence. A work of presence. A work of I am. A work of being. That which is small to the eye has a powerful effect on the body. We look at a small germ, a microscopic virus can bring the fiercest man to his knees. And if it's not for scientific knowledge, you wouldn't even know why. By its presence alone. I look at, Jesus said we are the salt of the earth and the light of the world. And I look at the properties of salt. Salt does not boast. Salt does not demand recognition. Yet it brings its taste to wherever it's present at. I look at the sunlight, at the light. It doesn't boast. It doesn't demand recognition. Yet it brings its warmth to whatever it shines on. Likewise, it's not our words and our teachings and our things like that transform the world so much as it's our very presence. Because when we look at the relationship factor that I spoke of earlier, we can see that the things that we think are affecting the world come from those relationships, come from the presence. It's not the teachings themselves that transform the world. It's not our words. It's not the force of ideas. It's the taste we bring. It's the warmth we bring by our shining. By our shining. On the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus told us to shine our light. He didn't say go out and preach this doctrine and start this religion or force this belief. Our promote dogmatism in some form or fashion. What Jesus said is, he said, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill can't be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house." And he goes on to say, he says, in the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. In the same way, let your light shine. Just like that. So the good deeds are really already here. They're what the light reveals. Yet the light itself is invisible. But what happens when that invisible light hits dust particles as it streams through the window? It's the relationship that light has with that dust particle that produces this great ray of what we would call light. And the great ray comes from the relationship of that which is invisible with that which is visible. And so Jesus tells us to be the light just like that. To bring our presence to that which is visible, and through that relationship give birth to the good. And so when we're shining as we should shine, or in the manner, I don't want to use the word should so much, should have and shouldn't, I don't like those words, but for lack of a better word, when we shine as we should, or in the manner that is in alignment with the will of God. That would be a better way of saying it than should, huh? Yeah. When we shine in the manner which is in alignment with the will of God, then the glory is given to God. We're not even recognized. We're like that invisible light. Because we're not the very deed itself. We're not simply the deed. We're the light that brings the deed to light. We are the light that brings the deed to light, so that it can become the light. And it's our shining, our presence that reveals, that makes things known. See, the glory of God is here now. The wonder of the kingdom of heaven is here now. And now, and now, and now. In our attention to that wonder, to that glory, to that awesomeness of the life that's here now, that's what draws others' attention to it. This, our attention to it draws others' attention to it. To be that invisible light that reveals. It's our attention to the wonder, to the kingdom of God that's here now, to the awesomeness of life that's here now, that draws others' attention to it. Consider this. Go out in a crowded market. Stand out in the middle of the crowd and simply look up into the sky. Stare at the sky. Consistently, persistently, patiently. And what you will find is that those that pass by you will notice you looking up. And they'll also look up to see what you're looking at. And see, that's what you are. You are that which looks at the glory of God that's here now. You are that which looks at the glory of God that's here now. In it you're looking at consistently, persistently, patiently. It's that steady gaze at God that makes you to be the light that you are. It's the attention that you give to life. That draws others to it. The finger pointing at the moon, as the Zen people would say. You're not the moon, but you're the finger in this sense. You're that which draws attention to the wonder of all the moon. You're that which draws attention to the awesomeness of life that's present by your joy here, by your peace here, by your posture and your stance of belonging here. Not in a stubborn way, but in a belonging, welcoming sort of way. By the presence of your righteousness with life here in this moment. By the grace with which you dance with this moment. By the grace with which you dance with this moment. By the grace with which you dance with this moment. So you shine. As Isaiah the prophet declared, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon you." You being covered with the glory of being, aflame with the consciousness, the presence of life itself, are that candlestick. You are the light bearer. Being the light bearer, those who glance your way are taken, they're stricken by the light, not by the farm. They're taken and stricken by the flame, not by the candlestick, not by the farm. The light is who you are eternally. The farm is who you are for a time. For a time. Farm isn't the real you. The light is the real you. But there is a farm. There is a farm that desires to be the light. That wants to take its place. I will call that the ego. Or St. Paul called it the flesh. Or some other people call it a body of pain or suffering. A form that is never content, never happy, with simply bearing the light. It wants to be it. It wants to take that throne. It wants to be the light by the acknowledgement of others. It wants others to know it as being the light by keeping them in the dark. By concealing its vulnerability and innocence. By putting on this light show. By showing off. By putting on a personality that seems to demand respect. And the thing is, in demanding it, it loses it. Its insistence doesn't bring persistence. Its insistence that it is the light its demands that others respect it as being the light is folly. How can others respect what we pretend to be? How can others respect what we not truly are? How can others respect what really isn't there, that is simply a facade? How can anybody show respect for something that doesn't even exist? Yet the insane ego demands that others respect its appearance. But that's really all it is, an appearance, a mirage. It's the same thing that the horizon is, a mirage. At the end of the day, we look at the horizon in the distance, and it seems to have an end to it. It seems that there's this edge, this end, and this edge where heaven and earth come together. Yet this edge is only a mirage. It isn't real. The horizon isn't real. It seems to have an end. It seems to have an edge. Yet that very edge is just a mirage. It's not real. You can chase after the horizon, but you'll never ever catch up to it. You can't catch up to it because it's not really there. It's only an appearance. It only exists in your mind. And there's no end to what we make life to be a means to thinking and supposing and attaching ourselves to a notion that there's some place to get to, something to gain besides life itself. Is when we see life as a means to an end, as a means to gain something, or as a means to lose something, we fail to simply live it. It's as if we're always running at the horizon, trying to catch up with it and grasp it. Yet the more people do that, the weaker they get from the effort they put forth. They're not catching up to it. What they do is they figure, I'm not trying hard enough, I'm not running fast enough. So they try harder and faster to catch it. What's not even there. And this turns into an obsession with trying to be what they are not, with trying to be where they are not, with trying to be when they are not. It's like chasing that horizon, that obsession. Like a dog chasing its own tail, trying to catch up with itself. Trying to catch up with itself so that it can make something out of itself. So that it can be somebody. So that it can gain importance and prestige. And when we believe the notion that we must make something out of ourselves, we end up just like that dog chasing its tail, like that person chasing the horizon. And we're conditioned to believe that way, aren't we? We're conditioned and taught to believe that we lack what it takes to be okay in this moment. We're conditioned to believe that we lack what it takes to live fully and completely here and now. We're conditioned to believe. We're conditioned to believe. Conditioned to believe. Conditioned to believe. And being conditioned to believe, we know nothing about true faith. We know nothing about truth. Nothing about actuality. Because the consciousness of that truth comes as a result of the conditioning rather than the truth itself. Rather than the truth itself. And caught up in that conditioning to believe, we become divorced from reality. Our relationship with reality begins to suffer. Conditioned to believe, people enter into this big chasm of darkness, this darkness of ignorance and delusion. And in the teaching one another of these beliefs, in the instructing one another in their imaginations of what is, what they begin to do is institute laws for being. They begin to institute rules for living. Based on their conditioning to believe things that aren't really even there. And then they insist that others conform to these laws and these rules. They condition their very children to adhere to these rules, to these laws, to these precepts, to these dogmatic doctrines. In leading them blindly, the blind lead the blind. Their children become blind by their blind leading of their parents. Led about by their beliefs and their notions of reality rather than a direct experience with truth itself. Led about by their beliefs and notions of reality rather than a direct experience of truth itself. It's as if to say, my friend knows the president, so I know the president because my friend does, rather than being in the presence of the president, knowing that directly, It's a second-hand relationship that people have with the truth that brings about this darkness. And we have to grow beyond, get beyond our second-hand relationships with the truth. Get beyond that which we're conditioned to believe. Because if we're led about with notions of right and wrong, rather than from a pure and unconditioned heart, we end up leading each other into the ditch. We end up being the blind leading the blind into the abyss, the very depths of hell. And this hell is a hell of our own making. A hell that's formed by the delusions of what righteousness is. A hell that's formed by delusions of what life requires. And what comes out of those relationships with these beliefs and these notions it sort of gives off an odor or a taste. There's this like odor or taste that greed and aversion and delusion bring with them. And when we don't come to see the relationships we have with our beliefs, when we don't come to see what that brings, what that produces into the environment that we're in, what we begin to do is pollute the world by our very relationship with it. When we see that world as being unfriendly or out to get us, then what comes out of that relationship is this contention with it, this fight with it. And we begin to fight what's inevitable, which is the return of the farm that we're in into that which it came from, which is dust. And people begin to fear death. And they live, but they live in fear. They live, but they live in fear. It's kind of like we make our home. It's kind of like we make our home in our own crap. It's like we pee in the pond and then go swimming in it, you know? When we live in the fear that we create. When we live in fear, we sort of live like a fish does out of the water. You know? Kind of like an ice cube lives in hell. We're never comfortable, we're never content when we're never at peace with what is. When we're never okay with being with what is being with us. And when we get that sense that we don't belong to life as it is in this moment, what we begin to do is wander. We begin to seek and look. Our minds begin to leave us. And we lose our minds. Oh. We begin to wander about in desert places, as Jesus said, seeking rest and finding none. Listless, restless spirits. With this delusion that rest is found by the seeking of it. Not seeing that rest is not found in the seeking of it. Rest is not found in the seeking of it. There's no way to peace. Peace is the way. Yet caught in that delusion, people try just all that harder. They try harder. They bury themselves deeper in their delusion. They go deeper into the darkness. in that relationship with that darkness produces a lot of the scenarios and manifestations that you can observe in the world today, many of which are there, and I need not take the time to name any of them. They're obvious. The fruit of that relationship with darkness. But there's hope for this people that are blind, that are leading others in their blindness. There's a great amount of hope for them, and their hope is in pain. Because the pain that comes out of the fruit of that relationship with darkness has the potential to bring them to see what their relationship is producing. So pain is their hope. Pain is their hope for awakening. Pain is the light that will wake them up. It's pain that's the light that will wake them up. We look at somebody that's pretty much lost their mind, that's in this emotional frenzy, that's coming from looking at the world askew. And I remember seeing this a lot of times, especially in the old movies and films. You see this chick all freaked out, and the guy would just bitch slap her in the face, just smack her in the face, and she'd come to and come back to her senses, you know. And sometimes when we're lost in that emotional frenzy, and that comes from that relationship with the darkness, we need that smack in the face. We need to be stricken in the face. We need that pain. We need that rude awakening. And so there are times when life itself will slap us in the face. That our face will encounter that hand of pain. And it's funny because that which brings them to light isn't the pleasure in this case. But the darkness has taught us to equate pleasure with good, and pain is that which is evil. And people with that belief resist the divine appointment that the hand of pain has with their face. They resist that. Yet if they can accept that rather than resist that divine appointment that pain has, the hand of pain has with their face, if they can only accept that rather than resist it, as Jesus would have said, to turn the other cheek when stricken by that hand, when that divine appointment occurs between the hand and the face. It's in the turning of the cheek, the other cheek, not in the resistance to it, but in the allowing of it to make us turn around, that we can awaken. Because it's in the turning of the cheek that the head itself is turned around. And the eyes turned around to see reality, they see it. They see it. When the head is turned around and the eyes can look back at the reality of life in this moment, it's in that turning of the head from that smack on the face. It's from the turning of the focus of the mind the veil becomes lifted, that the heart becomes enlightened. And that our relationship that we have with life itself becomes changed in our new vision. And then we experience what we call rebirth, or as Jesus would have said, being born again. And we go back into that innocent state of seeing the way a child does when we're born again. It's like a rebirth, but it's a birth back. It's not a birth into, it's a birth back into. Not back into a womb physically, as Nicodemus was thinking, but a being born back into the innocence that was lost when we buried ourselves in the soil of delusion that this world has to offer us. To see life afresh as being friendly and for us, rather than something we need to contend with and fight with. In being newborns, I was just thinking how this slap in the face turns our heads around, and we experience this new birth. And I was just thinking how the doctor pulls the baby out and slaps it on its ass to wake it up. And then it starts crying. And sometimes we don't know our head from our ass. And we need that slap to kind of to bring us into the next world, right? Into that next dimension. But we go back into that innocence, that newborn is born with that new eye to see with that new heart to be with, a heart to be with what's here, an eye to see what's here as it is, as it is. Without knowing it to be good or evil, we find ourselves back in the garden of God, It's like we wake up and we find that it was always there. It was always there, The tree of life was always there, always available for us to eat from, It's there now. It's here now. Everything we need to nourish us and feed us is here. Is here. It's here. And so the kingdom of God is at hand. At hand. At hand. And with that, I'm going to say namaste and thank you, my friends. God bless you.
This concludes today's session of One Breath. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings awaken to the light of their true nature. May all beings be free. To listen to past episodes or view our schedule, please visit our website at www.tinyurl.com/littlefell. Godspeed.